Many know the story of American sniper Chris Kyle. And over the last 11 years, his wife and 2 children have continued the journey. Taya, Colton, and McKenna are reaching families like their own with hope and a book of prayers. Taya Kyle is a New York Times bestselling author and the widow of American sniper Chris Kyle, who served 4 tours of duty as a Navy SEAL. Ultimately, Chris lost his life at a shooting range by a man he was trying to help. Since his death, Taya has worked hard to honor her late husband by providing help and hope to those enduring pain and loss. She does so through speaking engagements, writing, and creating her foundation, Taya and Chris Kyle Family, Service Marriage Strong. In her first ever children's book, Prayers for Bears, Taya Kyle teaches kids the importance of gratitude in every season of life. I am honored to be sitting with Taya, Colton, and McKenna. Welcome to you all.
Thank you very much.
Privileged to be with you.
It's an honor to be here.
Taya, when I heard you were coming on with a new book, I was surprised that it was Prayers for Bears, for children. Tell us about it.
Well, I love children's books, children's stories, all of that. I've always loved that with Colton and McKenna. And this one, I just felt like they're doing so well, and they're so resilient, and I'm in awe of them, really, and how God has worked through them for healing. And so it seemed like a natural fit to write a book about Bailey Bear, who experiences a little bit of a hard time, and then Bailey's parents teach Bailey some prayers of gratitude, and it changes things. So I feel like that's what's happened for us. We know that bad things happen and good things do, so acknowledge both, not just one or the other. And
you've been through the bad times, the tough, the pain, and so many know of your family, know of your husband, a hero, right?
Yeah.
And has it been a comfort to be able to mourn with millions of people, or has that been intrusive, and is it a mix of both?
That's a really good question. I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that before. I think for me, I was so passionate after Chris was killed about not letting someone take the work he was doing. Like, they took his body, but we were going to carry that torch and finish out what he was working on. And so I was so focused on that and trying to, frankly, outrun my grief that I didn't necessarily feel like I was mourning with people. I just felt like this desperate need to stay afloat. And now that we're all 11 years out, I think. Now I'm starting to feel like, oh, I could articulate and talk to people about grief, but it's taken that long.
So, Colton, you were about 11 or so when your dad was... Oh, 8, okay.
Yes, sir.
When your dad was, not just killed, he was murdered.
Right.
And so he has such an amazing legacy, military hero. And do you ever feel like that's so much to live up to? People look at you as his son. Is there pressure on that?
There is pressure, and I have felt that way before, and I don't feel that way now. I've been blessed and honored to be surrounded by so many good people that will pour into me, and supported by my mother, who has time and time again said, you don't need to be the man your father was. Like, you can be your own man. And he had even said before he died multiple times, there was no pressure to go into the military. He had served enough for our family. And so I felt very comforted by that. And at times I thought maybe I wanted to go into the military anyways. But while there has been pressure, I'm just excited to be on my own journey and be my own man, because I know that God gives us differently, and I know that I have different gifts, and I just wouldn't be living up to who I've been created to be if I tried to be another Chris.
Wow, that's deep. That's wisdom.
That is good, yeah.
So, Taya, in the years since his death, have your faith has evolved? For this project, Prayers for Bears, it's a new level of intimacy with prayer, and you're bringing children into it. How has your faith evolved over the years?
I am an entirely different person, especially from a faith perspective, than I was. My core is the same. Certainly, God makes us who he makes us. Faith has changed my life and transformed me to the point where we were driving home from church the other day and we're listening to worship songs, and it brought me to tears thinking, oh my gosh, I'm singing worship songs in the car with my son. And there was a time where I wouldn't have even listened to Christian music, and thinking what a beautiful, powerful thing God has done to give me incredible joy and connection to praise music and hymn. And I write letters to the Holy Spirit, and people can get that on my website, by the way. I'm sharing those just recently. But those came from an organic place of just, dear God, dear Jesus. I'm very connected. I could not be more grateful for that.
McKenna, how important has it been for you in this journey to have your brother and mom along with you to build each other up and support each other?
I think that's super important. They've been kind of what got me through everything. Yeah, they're just always there. They always have really good advice. They're very good spiritual mentors. Yeah.
Yeah. And Taya, so as you've all walked through this, you know, there's a lot of people watching the program who are going through seasons of grief and loss. How do you counsel people? I mean, there's different areas people struggling, but how do you generally counsel people who are dealing with grief?
You know, it's interesting. McKenna's very humble, but she's also shared a lot of spiritual wisdom with Colton and me too. And I think one of the powerful things God did is he gave us all three kind of different methods of grieving, so that we all three learned that with grief you submit to it. And that's not an easy thing to do for people who are ready to, we're all three people who are like, if we're in the fight, let's fight. And grief makes you do something different. It makes you submit. You are going to feel all the things that the therapist will tell you you'll feel, but they're not consecutive. They don't just come in one chunk. I mean, all the different feelings rotate in and out in a way that's unpredictable. It's not fun, but I think I would say it's a blessing once you get through it. Would you agree that you've grown so much spiritually from it that you see the blessing through it?
Absolutely.
Well, especially the way Chris died, he made it through all those tours and then to be killed at home. Yeah. And I know you've been able to help a lot of military families. How do you do that now? We serve military and first responder families through our organization, you know, for their marriages, which helps the whole family. And then I find that an incredible blessing that God puts me with people just randomly. It's a lot of times behind the scenes and doing different things, and there's something he's given me to draw from in different areas of my life that can benefit them in different ways. So we serve intentionally and then sort of unintentionally where God puts us. And Colton, you're leading the brand American Sniper.
I am.
Tell us about that.
I am running the American Sniper brand on AmericanSniper.com. I sell merchandise right now. My goal is to build out a robust number of products that represent the same values that I and my father share, which are godliness, passion, patriotism, excellence, and service. Serving those who serve us was something he was very passionate about, something that I share as well. And so I do that, and then I'm collaborating with a number of different brands, hopefully in the next year or two, to come out and produce good works of these brands that are already in the space, showing their support for these servicemen and women.
And you continue to honor your dad's legacy, too.
Yes, sir.
And McKenna, you had involvement in local law enforcement, I believe, to some capacity. What led you to partner with them? Tell us about that.
I've just felt like the police are very misrepresented. Well, any law enforcement, I think. People think that they're cruel or just want power, which, of course, there are some of those. But as a whole, they're typically really good people who genuinely want to protect and serve people.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to help with that on social media, just posting kind of what they actually do in stories and stuff like that.
Awesome. I mean, the whole family has a heart to serve.
Definitely.
And serve first responders and military. What are, for civilian folks like me, perhaps, what are some of the struggles military families have, and especially in regard to deployments, that really, you know, can destroy marriages and families that civilians don't realize or think about?
That is such a good question. How much time do you have? No.
As much as you need.
No, but I mean, in all seriousness, their schedules are changing constantly, and they have no control over it. Service people, both first responders and military. And so there was a lot of disappointment to the point where the spouse and children stop counting on their loved one to show up, which is hard on the person serving and the family. There are last-minute changes. There's the fear of death. So what do you do if you're afraid someone's going to die? Do you disconnect a little bit to protect yourself? Or do you connect so much that you're so in fear of it that that's a burden that they carry? There's a lot of navigating in that space. And then the service member and the spouse are changing in different ways. One's changing on the job and one's changing at home, and they have to find ways to connect, but it's not easy because they're limited on time, and they're limited by not having walked in the other person's shoes. Then they're not going to communicate with people on the job, because if you're having a hard time, a lot of times in those service communities, it's seen as weakness. And then the spouses don't want to connect with other spouses for support because they don't want somebody to look down on their husband as if their husband's having a hard time. So you become very alienated. And then your extended family, the service person usually doesn't know how to articulate the changes that they're going through, which is normal with trauma. So they feel disconnected from their extended family, or they feel like they need to present a part of them that their extended family knew before, but it's not authentic to them, which causes some frustration. And so it's sort of identity crisis as well in there. And then trying to figure out how to be both mom and dad when they're home, and then let dad or mom be that when you're together again. I mean, it is a very complicated thing, but what we found with our foundation is there are simple tools. They're just not intuitive. And so that's what we want to do, is bring them tools from a strengths perspective and help them survive it and thrive instead of feel hopeless, which is what happens.
So many layers, and a lot of people think, oh, husband or wife is now home, everything's better, the family's fine.
They're not.
They're not.
No, they're not. And it hurts. I remember Chris was out of the military, but tired of being gone, and he had to leave for work one day. And McKenna liked all of the, kind of the chickens in the coop kind of thing, right? And so he was leaving, and she got tears in her eyes, and she said, I know Daddy's coming back in a couple days. I just miss him when he's gone. And when Chris called, I told him that, just thinking it would make him feel good and loved. And he grabbed his nose, the guy that was with him told me, leaned against the wall and slid down the wall into a crouch position, trying not to cry. He was tired of his kids missing him and not being there when he wanted to be there too. And he's still trying to, make a living. And so I think that just shows that there's an undercurrent of sadness too, that he would not have spoken of while he was in, but when he was out, he realized how much he missed and how much he wished he had been there, to the point where our niece at the time was having a tantrum at 2, and I could feel something from him. This was maybe 2 weeks before he was killed. I put my hand on his leg. I said, "Are you okay?" He said, I wish I had been there for all of this. Even the kid throwing a tantrum, it's like, how do you do that? You have a purpose here, and you have a purpose here, and you can't be two people.
Yeah.
It's stressful.
Last question, especially Colton McKenna. Is there anything you'd like to share about your dad? I mean, people think they know your dad. They've read the books. They've seen the movies. Anything you'd like to share about him?
That's a good question. I can start. I know that he was extremely loving, and I know that he liked to have fun. A lot of people say they like to have fun, but he meant it. So he liked to play pranks, and he was really invested in spending time with us. And a lot of, I think, parents can get invested in what they can do for their kids, but he really took it to heart in being with his kids, which means a lot. So that's what I'd like to share.
I think that a lot of people know him as what he was famous for as a warrior, but I didn't know him as that. I knew him as a dad, and he was, like Colton said, just very fun-loving, very funny. He loved to laugh. He loved to Nerf wars, anything like that. And yeah, he was really a family guy.
Oh, sweet. I bet he was awfully good at the Nerf wars, by the way.
He was.
Well, what's funny is he would teach the kids too with those Nerf gun things. He'd be like, trigger control, never have your finger on the trigger till you're ready to pull it. Muzzle control, keep it, but not in an annoying way, really. I mean, truly, he wasn't being that overbearing, but he and he wasn't obsessed with it, but he'd just kind of teach them a little while they were young. And it is what they said. I mean, McKenna was always on his lap or hugging on his leg, and he just thought the sun rose and set with these two, and it was definitely the best part of his day. He'd come home, and it was like the whole running into his arms thing, and he's an incredible father. Like, watching him be a dad was probably one of the best things there were a lot of good things, but I really loved watching him be a dad.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you speaking about him, and we can learn more about him and continue to honor him. And thank you for all you're doing for families in this country, military families.
Yeah.
We greatly appreciate it. I want to let you know Prayers for Bears is the new book, and it is wonderful and has a great message. I really encourage you to pick up a copy.